Welcome, everyone. I'm here for one of my stories. This is Lindsay Dunn, and I am very, 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 very excited to get started with this project, which is going to be recaps of 1899. Joining me on this voyage is my co-captain, Anthony Holden, who's also known as the Blakcinephile. Anthony, this is your very first time
Just
on my
Black
channel.
Cinephile.
What
Yes,
did I
it's
say?
not that. You said the Black Cinephile, just Black Cine.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
the
okay.
makes it too official. It's just Black Cinephile.
I made well, you're official to me. You're important and official. So
Thank you.
Blakcinephile. All right. So this is your very first time on one of my stories. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to my viewers and let people know what it is you do. How did you get into film criticism? And if they, what is it that you work on most of the time?
Yeah. I'm a film lover, film critic, film writer too. Um, what basically got me into film criticism, I just remember, I don't know if it was my wife or one of my friends, but I remember I was talking about a film. I don't remember which one, but I was talking about everything I liked from the directing to the acting, was critical on, I think, the cinematography of it or something like that. I was just talking about a lot of stuff. One person said, dude, you should write about stuff like that. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you should write about film. Like, it seems like you're very passionate about film. I was like, oh, you mean be a critic? Don't they like hate everything? And that was that I didn't know much about film critics outside of Eper and Roper, and I used to watch old archive videos of their like because I used to like them. So I pretty much like just kind of jumped head first into writing reviews for movies I liked. Um, I took a few film theory classes in college, and I think that has some kind of influence on me when I would speak about films. Not too much of an influence, but it gave me a deeper love and understanding for film, like beyond just being a fan. So yeah, I kind of hopped into film criticism because I felt like, when I wasn't screenwriting, I felt like I need to do something in regards to cinema. So I write reviews on it. You know what I mean? Even if there's a movie I just did not like, let me write a persuasive argument as to why I didn't like it and try to find some things I did like in it while I'm going through my essay or whatever. So I mean, it's not really a entertaining story, but that's kind of how I got into criticism. Um yeah, but that's pretty much what I do. I write criticism. I co-run a podcast with my best friend called Double Feature Versus, where we take two movies with a connecting theme and put them against each other. So this last one we just did Weird Al Yankovic's UHF versus Weird the Al Yankovic Story with Daniel Radcliffe.
Mm-hmm.
We just put them together, see which movie wins out, which movie is better, and it's fun, So that's pretty much what I do right now. I've been writing reviews and working on that show.
So all kinds of genres. Do you lean heavily towards one or the thing or the other, or
Um, I mean, I pretty much lean towards what story is interesting to me, but most likely it's like hard hitting dramas, psychological thrillers, good action, not run of the mill action. I have a guilty pleasure for the Fast and Furious films. I know family, I know, but I love those movies, man. I love how stupid and fun they are. Um, Animation, it depends on who's in the driver's seat. Like Henry Selick would probably get me to watch Wendell and Wild. Otherwise, him and Jordan Peele. Otherwise, probably wouldn't watch a movie like that. But it's pretty much dramas and thrillers and action movies and like great dumb comedies.
wonderful? Okay. Well, today what we're discussing is definitely not a big dumb comedy, but that's okay. We do all kinds of stuff, both on my channel and yours. It
I like
sounds
your
like.
background.
Thank you. Yes. Behind me is a very annoying fire hydrant and a very plain looking wooden wall. So I always go for the Zoom background every single time. So today we are doing the first of many recaps of the show 1899. I believe there's 8 episodes. I'm hoping that we'll get to do all 8. I'm really hoping I can persuade Anthony to continue on this journey with me the whole time. So,
Hey, I
but
signed up. Let's
yeah.
go.
All right. So 1899 is led by the same showrunners as Dark, Baran, Odar and Jantje Friese. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but they are a mega team, and it would really, they have built up a lot of equity for me, which is why I wanted to watch this show. So, Anthony, what is your experience with the show Dark, and what do you remember really liking about it?
So so when I first started watching it, it was like immediately like post college. So I remember I was working at a call center job, and one of my coworkers said to me, because we were talking about like a TV show, and this was Netflix when they were really putting their thing on the table, like, oh no, we do great TV. Orange is the New Black was out, uh House of Cards was out. They were really like putting their stamp on like streaming television and being the front runner of like prestige streaming television. So I remember I was talking with him, and he says, hey man, do you like Stranger Things? I'm like, not really. He says, you want to watch a darker Stranger Things? I was like, okay. Oh, it's what did he tell me? He's like, oh, it's German. I was like, okay, you got me intrigued. They, you know, anything foreign,
You
of
like the
something that's
German, you like the Germans, huh? You're like, I like the, the
in,
European television.
a foreign take on anything familiar usually turns out great. So I was like, okay, you got me. What's it about? And so he was like, it's hard for me to describe it. It's very complicated. You kind of just have to watch it. So I was intrigued. I was like, okay, it's a Netflix show, hit or miss. Most likely it'll be a hit. So I watched it. I watched the first episode and I liked it. Somehow life got in the way and I got distracted, and I didn't finish it again until a year ago from today when I really jumped back into it. But basically, Dark is just a show that really, if you pay attention to it, it rewards you in spades. If you
Mm-hmm.
passively watch it, you can miss key important things. It doesn't hold your hand, but it doesn't let you go either. Like if you pay attention to it, it pays you in spades. And I like how it's really a, a cyclical, I don't know how to say that word, but cyclical narrative. It's a circular narrative. I'll say it that way. How everything ties together and everything is connected through three separate time periods, and how that follows it from the beginning to end. And yeah, I mean, my thoughts on Dark was that it was very well crafted. The dark tone was excellent, the atmosphere was excellent, the acting, the directing, the writing, the score. It hooked me in from like the first episode to last. There was never a moment where I was kind of left hanging, like, all right, this show is kind of spinning its wheels. Everything was purposeful. There's not one moment in the series wasted. And it's kind of hard for me to say that about a show because every show has a filler. Dark, every episode led a necessary piece to its puzzle of its narrative.
Mm-hmm. Right. There were definitely episodes where less things happened and it was more a thought piece, or you were getting introduced to this one character. So there were definitely some episodes that were more action packed than others. But I agree. A lot of times when you're watching, my problem with a lot of TV shows is sometimes it feels sort of like they don't know where they're going for the purpose, and you're just kind of like, what's happening?
Mm,
But I felt like every choice made, every episode, like these guys knew what they were doing, wanted to do from the beginning, and they crafted it from the beginning. And it's also a great show for digging, which I enjoy, that you start to
yes.
find connections between, oh, this character has their name means this, and that person is a literary person, and this, they have this painting on the wall, and the painting is actually connected to the plot in this loose way. If you, so it's, there's lots of breadcrumbs and stuff that you can hunt for to the extent that you want. If you want to do that a little bit, fine. If you want to go way off the deep end, you can get into those Reddit posts and spend hours on
Right.
there.
I didn't do all that. I kind of just trucked through it, and if there was anything I was confused about, then I'd probably go to the internet and say, "All right, what did I miss?" But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I found it also really emotionally resonant at that time. my sister had just passed away, and there was a lot of
Oh,
stuff
okay.
about
Sorry.
death and grieving. And I felt like this show helped me kind of explore that through the different characters' journeys and seeing how that can look different for
Hmm.
people. Almost everybody in the show is grieving something or sad about something, and but different people have different ways of expressing that and having it come out. And that is very freeing to vicariously see other people going through grief and loss while you are. Some people are like, no, I don't want to do that at the same time. I'd rather watch something happy while I'm going through this to balance it out. But I don't know.
Hmm.
For me, I'm like, yes, send me into the depths with you and take me into your world. It's a slight escape from yours, and you feel kind of seen through that. So I also
Yeah.
liked that about the show very much. So what did you expect from this show? Had you watched any trailers, or, what were your expectations going in, if any?
I have a thing where if I'm expecting a project and I'm sold on the creator or the director or whatever, I try to avoid trailers as much as possible. You can't always trust that the trailer won't give away the plot these
Mhm.
days. There are some directors and some projects like Nope, for example, where the trailer doesn't give away the plot of the movie. It gives you just enough to be intrigued. You can't trust every trailer to be like that though. So for the longest time, I would see posts on my social media by Netflix saying, "Oh, we have a new show from the creators of Dark, and if you thought Dark was a puzzle, 1899 is way more complex and intriguing." I was like, "Oh, okay, they got a new show coming out." So I would see like production stills, I would see little bits of the trailer. I would see the poster of the ship and the upside down triangle, and I would go, "Okay, creators of crafted series, I'm in off that." I didn't look for trailers and stuff, but I noticed you were really onto every hint being thrown up into the premiere.
Well, no, I wouldn't say every hint. Honestly, after Dark ended, the showrunners said, we're coming up with this new show, 1899. And of course, my first thought back there is they had like dropped down to, I think the earliest timeline they had explored was 1920, and they might have gotten into the 1890s for one episode for just one little bit.
Yeah,
And
I
so
think they went
then
to
you're,
1888.
yeah, so you're like, oh, we're back in the 1800s, and
Mhm.
obviously this is somehow going to explore a different time period again, whatever that looks like. So that sort of jumped out. I think for me though, I was like, okay, don't expect another Dark. You have to let them do a different thing and be okay with that.
Mhm.
Um, but I did expect that there would be like a really moody score. It's going to be moody. There's going to be really good characters, really good writing, just because that's kind of their brand, is you're going to be
Right.
swept into the mood. And so, but beyond that, I tried also to really stay away. And it wasn't till the last month that I really started putting anything out, because I wanted to begin announcing sort of that I'm going to be doing 1899 stuff. So I did start to, as I learned things, I started to put things out, but I really only had the trailer to go on, and I joined a few Facebook groups, but you honestly don't get a lot of great content from many Facebook groups. That they'll just keep sharing memes, the same memes over and over again, or saying like, is
Yeah.
there going to be a season 2? It's like, haven't even had season 1 yet. Just calm down. Like, let's enjoy what we
Yeah. Yeah, there's those people. Because you gotta understand, this is the age of the now. We want everything now. So if you're gonna give me a whole season now, I want to know if season two is greenlit now.
Mhm.
So there's just a lot of impatience in this kind of generation of cinema and television.
Right. But yeah, it's in it, if I was going to follow the flow of other people, I would have finished the whole series by now. But
Mm,
because of how much I liked Dark, I wanted to not do that. And so, like right now, I've still only watched episode 1, and I know you just watched episode 1. So neither
hmm.
one of us have gone too far, which is nice because we have so much to look forward to, as opposed to people who watched it. And I understand why people do that, because it's like there's spoilers everywhere. So if you don't watch it right now, someone's gonna spoil it for you. But
Right. Well, I mean, the way to solve that is just to like not search for things. I think people kind of get in their own way. If you go searching for something, you're gonna find it. Like,
mhm.
oh, let me look up 1899 for like if season two is coming out, and the article you read is like, well, we know from that season one cliffhanger, da 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 da. Wait, I didn't want to know that. Well, you went searching for something that led you to that trap.
Right.
But I like watching one episode at a time. I think it savors the anticipation. Days when I was watching Breaking Bad in real time on TV. Those are some of my best days. I think if Breaking Bad came out season by season all at once, I don't know. I don't know if I would have loved it as much, because I like the anticipation of knowing next week what is going to happen to Walter. What's going to happen? You know what I mean? You watch that
Yeah.
show?
Breaking Bad. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the best shows of all time.
Definitely.
In my
Definitely.
opinion. Yeah. Okay. So let's get into episode 1, which is titled The Ship. The description of the show on IMDb is nice and brief, so I'll go ahead and read that. Multinational immigrants traveling from the old continent to the new encounter a nightmarish riddle aboard a second ship adrift on the open sea. So, we should probably. What do you think of that description?
That's funny. I didn't even look up the plot before I watched this. I really just sailed on the name of the creators of Dark. Like I knew it was set in the past. I mean, it's called 1899. It's not hard to figure that out. But I mean, I didn't know like the whole thing about we're going to get into it, the Prometheus ship and all that. Like I didn't know that was part of the plot. I just thought, okay, ship, strangers, and when you were on Twitter, you said something about a Tower of Babel situation where people have different languages and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, that was a surprise knowing that that's what the movie's about. But I wanted to ask you, how about that White Rabbit remix in those opening titles, huh? That was different.
Yeah, the song, it's definitely an interesting choice. Now, the song White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, it's been used in
Many times.
countless movies and shows as some kind of an anthem because it's kind of got these trippy lyrics. And what's interesting is, for me, the chord progression of the song. So it's a distorted version of it. And the original song also, the verse starts low and then it keeps getting higher in the notes, and then with this it's just kind of done. And I was trying to figure out, did they reverse the chords, did they take some out, did they do something to make it a little more minor than normal. I'm not a musician. I mean, I am a musician, but I don't understand that level of detail.
I don't know if they did that, but I did know because I was watching this with subtitles because you never know what you're gonna get with a show that has like multi-language characters and dialogue. I would hear with the score like, okay, in parentheses, distorted noise, distorted reverb of laughter and stuff like that. So like the score is distorted in its own way. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way they did White Rabbit in that opening title or those opening titles. I don't know how to say that because I know it's not the logo, but it's like the opening title sequence, which I assume happens in every episode, being that I just saw episode 1. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the composition of the record. I just thought it sounded sweet. Like I was like, all right, this is a nice dark upgrade of this song to fit this. It's like when Dark ended and they did their own version of "It's a Wonderful World."
Right.
Oh, What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. I was like, okay, that's sweet. It's bittersweet in a way.
Right. It's an original, that version of White Rabbit, that is the title credits, that is done by Ben Foster, who does the music. And somebody said the other collaborator on the song was a somehow related to David Bowie, I believe. So I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that more for the next episode. But yeah, it was interesting. And we should probably mention the one of the interesting things, and the reason why I said Tower of Babel situation is, unlike Dark, which was all in German, everybody spoke German and we had the English subtitles if you speak English like us. But on
Hmm.
this show, there are all these languages and everybody speaks their own language, which I think is a brilliant decision, because and that's what you would expect. Like, if you're think about it, if you're on a cruise ship, I mean, I know this is different than a cruise. It's people going across from, they said, the old continent to the new. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean exactly, but we have people that are from all over the world, and if you're on a ship with other people who speak different language, you're not you're all speaking your own language. You're not like necessarily all going to understand each other. So you
Hmm.
have not only the beauty of the different languages, hearing that, but there's levels to that, because sometimes they kind of understand each other and sometimes they don't. Like, they'll say, I can't understand you, but then sometimes they're adding motions or body language to clarify what they're saying, or
Right.
it seems like
But
they can get a
I
few
think,
words of English in.
yeah, body language is universal. I think
Mm-hmm.
that that's a brilliant thing about this show. Like, even if you watch Dark without the subtitles, without even knowing German, you could tell by body language how someone's feeling. Like, that's universal. That has no type of nationality or anything attached to that. You know when someone's angry, when someone's worried, when someone's happy, when someone's sad or anything like that. So yeah, like I said, that agreeing with you, that is clever. I like, this is like the third thing I've seen this year where there's a clear divide between that there's a story of classism in a way. Actually, the fourth thing, Glass Onion, The Menu, Triangle of Sadness, and now this, which Triangle of Sadness deals with another type of ship.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you got the Danish community, which I believe is downstairs,
Mm-hmm. Right.
living in the downstairs quarters. You have the Cantonese duo of the two ladies. You have the Mexican brothers. You have the British doctor, and you got the German captain, as well as some other characters. You got some people that got a person that came on the ship. I don't know. I think he's Polish. The black man. I think he was speaking Polish.
He
You
was
have
speaking French,
he was
but
speaking. Okay, who was speaking Polish? Was it the other guy he was talking to that was from?
the worker that's shoveling coal down in the, the worker, he's the one that speaks Polish.
Okay, so you have one Polish worker from downstairs. You have one black Frenchman. There's such a uh, uh like there's a big group of like different nationalities here,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I feel like that plays very nicely into the script and into the dialogue too. Like when she's when the British doctor, not to skip ahead to like us describing that episode, but when she's dealing with the woman that has the baby, she's speaking to the young girl. She doesn't understand the young girl, but she's saying like, listen, I gotta do this, and the young girl understands her through body language, which like I said is universal with through hand gestures and things like that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the little girl did know just limited English, because she could say like 7 months, and she was the one that translates to her parents.
Oh
She
yeah,
wants to
yeah,
turn the
you're
baby.
right.
So there's the little girl for some reason, and that seems normal too. Like, a lot of times little, children end up being translators for their parents. They
Mm-hmm.
have children pick up things quicker for some reason. But okay. So going back to the beginning, we have this poem by Emily Dickinson, "The Brain is Wider Than the Sky." And that was an interesting opening, because, they're talking about the brain being wider than the sky, the brain deeper than the sea. And, I had never heard that poem before, but it
I didn't
just,
know that was from a poem.
you just learned.
How did you find out? Did you look it up or?
I was thinking either this is an original thing or it's a poem. So I just Googled the first two lines of it to see
Wow.
what it
Okay.
came up with. And Emily Dickinson, she has a history of being a famous poet that had, you know, lay ideals we would now call feminist. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she was a thinker and an intellectual, and that goes along nicely with our lead character, who's more Franklin. But there's this poem read with all these moody shots of the pyramid and the snow and the ocean, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows what it means, but it's just
Right, right.
kind of, you enjoy it. Then you go down into this whirlpool and you see this woman in a hallway who's dressed in rags, and she's
Mm-hmm.
yelling at a man she calls father, and she's asking where her brother is, and saying she's not crazy and talking about her memories. So we don't know if this is a dream, a memory, if this is real. And then there's a wake up, and she wakes up in the bed. So what were your thoughts about that? What did you have any immediate reactions to the fact that you saw this woman who was looked like she's upset, and then she wakes up in this bedroom and she's in 1899?
Um, I I guess my initial thought was like, oh, she must transport to another world or another time while she's sleeping, and that was basically my thought about that. And I said, all right, I'm strapped in, ready for the show to start. Yeah, I feel like that was kind of something where, okay, it doesn't make much sense now, but of course of course it's gonna make sense later. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, it's like when Dark, and I don't mean to keep going back to Dark, but it's like when Dark started off with the suicide of Mikhail. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why this guy's committing suicide, but
Right.
I know it's gonna make sense to me later. So yeah.
Yeah. So she wakes up, and she's in this, we don't know what it is. It's a bed. She's wearing clothes, and she finds
Mhm.
this newspaper that says the Prometheus has been missing. It seemed like a very conveniently placed newspaper. She's like looking around. Oh, here's the newspaper. It tells me what today is. Um, so she reads that. She's now dressed. You see that she has scars on her wrist, and so there's a lot of thoughts you could draw. But again, like you said, you don't want to draw too many right at the beginning. But you're like, was she restrained? Are those scars on her wrist? So
Mhm.
somehow, you think maybe she has a past in this hospital. Um, and it was also kind of interesting that she's standing in front of a mirror saying what the date is, what the name is, almost like she's rehearsing for something. Like if you were getting ready to go into an interview and you're pumping yourself up and you're like, you're amazing, you've got this. It kind of reminded me of something like that. It
I
definitely wasn't normal.
I looked at that as if she was trying to remind herself where she was.
Mm-hmm.
She was trying to remind herself of who she was and where she was. Like, okay, you're here right now, you're in reality, you're in this reality, like, like just come back to your reality. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I looked at that. Like maybe I don't know, maybe when she's dreaming or when she's unconscious, she's transported to another world or another time and place. So that was her trying to come back to the time and place of 1899 on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that's how I
Right.
looked at it.
You know how it kind of reminds me of, when you're talking that way, it reminds me of like Inception, and they wake up and they need the totem right away and they have to look at it
Yeah,
to remind themselves of where they are. But why would you need to do that? Is the big question, is why would you need to center yourself that way? Why would you need to
right.
ground yourself? A couple of other interesting things in this scene. I mean, not a lot happens, but there are some little clues that are kind of nice. She puts the newspaper down on a desk, and she has a manual open to a picture of a brain, it looks like, and there's this
Mm-hmm.
novel, The Awakening by Kate Chopin, that she puts the paper on top of. And, knowing these showrunners, they don't put things in there by accident. So,
Right.
have you heard of The Awakening by Kate Chopin, or know anything about
No,
that book?
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'd never read it before either. I looked it up just to get a brief idea, and it's about a woman, about a woman who wrestles with ideas of like, this is what the society expects me to do by being a wife and a mother. And then there's this life that maybe I would like to have instead. So it's freedom versus society expectations. And at the end
Hmm.
of the book, she ends up drowning in the ocean. It's a very tragic story, obviously.
Oh
And
wow.
it was published in 1899. So this is the book that Mara Franklin is reading. And that could say some interesting things about her.
I wonder if that dictated putting it in this year, or that was just a happy accident on the side of the writers. Like, let's see if we can find an influential novel from this year that we're making this show, and if we can center it around that. Oh, this book just happens to exist, and it fits into what our lead protagonist is going through. Genius. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder how that came about. Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
Um, and what you said about the main character feeling like she can do more than what she's like put into or conformed to be, kind of ties into what another character says later on. Like, you know, they show you the whole world just to tell you in the end you can't have it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I thought that's I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting line. So yeah, she announces the date. She leaves her room, which is the cabin number is 1011. And that was also her room number in the vision at the beginning. So that was
Mm-hmm.
another little interesting clue. And her name, Mara, means star of the sea, and she speaks English. So I think it's important
Mm.
to mention what everybody's language is as we go along, especially in this first episode.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything else you want to say about that scene?
No, no, you pretty much covered it. My notes are kind of like about like other scenes and stuff like that.
We move to the steam room, and men are working. Everybody's speculating about what happened to the Prometheus. We meet our Polish character, whose name is Olek, and his name means defender of mankind. It's actually a Ukrainian name, but he speaks Polish, which I guess maybe
Mm-hmm.
is that what people speak in the Ukraine? I have no idea. They could, I don't know if they speak
I don't know.
Russian or Polish or a mixture. Could be, but I feel like his position was even, you were talking about class before, and
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty clear that Oleg is maybe considered, even amongst the workers, low man on the totem pole, because he's the one they say when the coal gets stuck, they tell him to go up and fix it. So he's kind of the guy maybe who has gets all the unpleasant jobs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's got this postcard of Lady Liberty. So that is those are a few things about him, not very much, but we get to see him a little bit more later.
We could tell he's gonna be important later on. Like, you know, we could tell the way the show kind of lingers on him as as he's dealing with the coal and things of that nature, that he'll probably become a factor later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this first episode is definitely just
It's a
it's
lot
going
of
to
set piecing.
introduce us to all of our main characters. So we then move into the dining room, first class dining. So now we're getting
Mm-hmm.
up into our first class crowd, and we meet Clemence and her husband Lucien. They are French, and I guess they are on their honeymoon. But they obviously they don't seem to click very well throughout the
It's
show.
arranged.
It's
Yeah,
arranged.
yeah. You could tell they don't like each other, or you could tell the wife is trying, and the husband's just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
dismissive of her. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's arranged.
Right. Most likely. I think, yeah, as we get to know them better, we'll find out more. A lot of times there's more than meets the eye, and
Right, right, right.
I enjoy that. Well, her name means merciful and his name means light. So we'll see if they end up embodying those names.
He's supposed to represent life.
Yeah. Um, and he's kind of staring at the Cantonese women that you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
earlier. They are of Asian heritage. They speak Cantonese, but one of them is dressed as a Japanese geisha. So this
Mm-hmm.
is where I'm talking about where it's interesting to see that everything is not what it necessarily appears, because they
Right.
are Cantonese is a language you speak in China. They are posing as people who are Japanese.
Right. Right. So so what was your reaction to that? My reaction was like well, about learning that they're trying to learn Japanese and that she's one of them is dressed as a Japanese geisha,
Mm-hmm.
is that it could be in a case of a stolen identity. They could be posing as they really aren't, you
Mm-hmm.
know, cutting to, I don't want to jump too ahead. If you want
Yeah.
me to stop jumping ahead, just let me know. But like cutting to a later scene in the show, like you kind of get the vibes that these people aren't who they appear to be. Like a lot of whole other people on the ship.
Yeah.
But I one of the things that the companion that sits next to Mara says is like she goes through each of the couples,
Mm-hmm.
each of the pairs that are sitting in the room, and she says, "Oh, look at that French couple over there. You could tell they're not in love. Look
Yeah.
at those brothers over there, that priest and that other guy. You could tell they got something going on." She kind of sees everybody except the women that she thought she knew, or she could be in on it too. That
She
she
says she does mention them. She says that exotic bird and her servant, but she doesn't
right,
necessarily draw any conclusions in that scene. That's where she's telling Mara that, hey, some things are best left in the dark. Maybe it's best that we don't know what's going on in everyone's head. And she names these people as examples. But
right,
as
right.
far as what was going on, I wasn't sure. It was just, yeah, my initial thought was that they're in disguise in some ways. They're pretending to be someone they're not. The woman who's dressed up as the geisha, her name is Ling Yi, and she's complaining about how many knives there are, which I thought was one of the funnier lines of the show, because it seems so real that you would do that. And the other woman, her name is Yuk Ji, and she says, just pretend you know what you're doing, which
Right.
it's like perfect advice. It sounds like something you would say in any time period.
Mm-hmm.
But Lucian is definitely staring at these women for some reason, and Clemens notices this and she doesn't like it. So um Yuk means moon, and Ling means the sound of jade or dawn or the sound of chimes, which could be an interesting clue with all of the different noises we hear in the show.
That's the captain, isn't it?
Well, his name is Ike, EYK.
EYK.
Yeah, EY,
Oh,
Captain
okay.
Ike.
Oh, you're right. Uke. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got
Yeah.
Uke and Ike confused.
Well, they sound kind of the same. They
Yeah. Yeah,
could
they
they
do kind of look the same a little bit. Yeah.
We then have Mara comes into the dining room, and she's got these whispering noises following her wherever she goes. Um and then we see the two men speaking Spanish. One looks like he's a priest, the other one's dressed in white.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you think of their dynamics? On, I guess it's on Hell, he just came across as like a drunk, a boisterous drunk guy, maybe a little bit. He's ordering more drinks, and the priest is like, quiet down, haven't you had too many to drink?
No one knows what I'm saying. People don't understand Spanish. Like, I love how he just
Yeah.
talks loud at that moment. I could tell he's gonna be fun. He could either be a fun troublemaker or just a fun person in general. But I definitely think we have some interesting things coming from him.
Mm-hmm. He's like a society. He reminds me of like a society guy. He's well dressed. He
Mm-hmm.
never. He's used to probably getting what he wants out of. He has a level of power. Um.
Definitely knows how to be a manipulator. You can tell that about him.
Yeah. they both speak Spanish. Ramiro means renowned counselor. That the priest name is Father Ramiro. And then, of course, Angel means angel. So angels were messengers.
But what's
Which,
up with these positive names given to the most like questionable people?
well, you remember, it's like, and we said, you were like, I'm not going to keep going back to dark, but I was like, hey, let's go back to dark. In dark, a lot of times you met characters and they seemed pretty despicable and unlikable, but then as you go along, you learn to respect them more, you get a level of empathy, you find out more about them. Whereas some of the other characters that you think are the good guys, show some shades of not being always, they have some flaws, which I like that because I enjoy that everything's not black and white. But I do think it's
Fair.
interesting that
Fair.
Angel is kind of the jerk, and well, he's coming across as a jerk, and his name means, messenger of God. He's wearing white, but you can tell that, okay, the priest is supposed to be the good guy, but he's wearing the black garb, and then Angel's kind of a jerk, is wearing this pristine white suit, which is, the color of angels, kind of is white and gold.
Right.
So then we have this scene where Virginia Wilson, who is another English lady who's traveling alone. Mara and her are both traveling alone, supposedly, and that's how she comes across, that she comes over to Mara and just kind of says, hey, may I join you? And I thought it was funny how she didn't really ask. She didn't really wait for a response. She just sat down and started to talk to her. So this was an interesting scene, seeing their dynamic. And I know you've kind of mentioned it already, but what did you notice about their conversation that you thought was?
I think Virginia sees all the hands that are covered at the poker table. I think she's a
Yeah, I
very
love that.
intuitive character. Yeah, she knows all the hands. Even the hands of the Cantonese duo of let me get their names again. Ling and Yuk. Like, she knows the hands of everybody. Or at least thinks she does. She's definitely not dumb. She's definitely not
Mhm.
naive, and I don't think she's a person that reaches in her descriptions. I think she's pretty dead on with how she perceives everyone in that room, or everyone that's a important character in that room.
Mhm. Yeah, I noticed you can tell she's very observant. She notices a lot. That makes her really dangerous, though. And she presents herself as a friend to Mara. She presents herself as a helper. I'm doing you a favor by sitting here. Rumors can start. You don't want things to get out of hand. And so I'm going to sit here and sort of take you into my confidence. But you see at the end, it's sort of to lower her guard, because she says she's telling them all the secrets, and then she says, and you must be running for something too, and kind of stops, and it's sort of like, now this is your invitation to confide in me. But then, but Mara seems pretty smart, and she sees that Mrs. Wilson isn't somebody who will keep her mouth shut either. You wouldn't want to tell your secrets to this woman, because she's just spilled everything she knows to a perfect stranger.
Yeah.
But you also find out that Mara is a brain who's, she's a doctor who, well, she asks her if she's a doctor, and she says, well, I studied the brain. And that seems to excite Mrs. Wilson. You get to cut up brains? Well, no. Women can study, not practice. And she asks her why she likes brains, and Mara says something very interesting, which is the brain holds all the secrets of the universe. And I thought that
So
was a
yeah,
beautiful line. Go ahead.
that's why I like Mara. She's kind of a weirdo, but she's a weirdo that interests me.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean weirdo as a compliment. Like, she'll say something like that in a conversation, and on the surface, you're like, what? What do you mean? But as she explains herself and why she loves doing what she does, you respect her for it, and you also, you kind of you fall in love with her interest, and it makes you want to know even more how she got caught up with the bruises on her wrist and really what's going on with her.
Mm-hmm. But she also doesn't, she's somebody, because she's quieter. She also is an observer like Mrs. Wilson. You can tell Mara doesn't really miss everything, but she also doesn't feel a need to get into everybody's business. And I like that about her. So if you earned her trust, you'd probably feel pretty good about yourself because you
Mm-hmm.
can tell she doesn't really trust that many people. And that's the way she interacts with people throughout. She's very slow to let her guard down. Definitely an intriguing character.
Yep.
We then get interrupted by a cry for help. And one of the Danish passengers, his name is Kriester, he comes up looking for a doctor. And we didn't mention this, but there is another doctor on the ship who's, I think his name is Dr. Mori, which is another person who Mrs. Wilson points out and, points out that
Oh
he's
yeah.
dumb as a stump. And,
Right. Yeah.
this man is desperately in pain and crying for help, and this male doctor just sits there. I guess a third class passenger is beneath his interest.
Right.
And but Mara gets up and immediately is ready to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting sequence. I didn't know if you were going to move down to this. Are you moving to when she follows him downstairs to the issue?
Yes, we can go there. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I wanted to say that was a well done, like, tense sequence.
Mm-hmm.
There's a woman that's on the table and she's having labor pain. She's pregnant. And the whole time, like, we spoke about it earlier, Barbara's talking with a young Danish girl, and the Danish girl kind of understands her. And she's like, how far along is she? And the Danish girl kind of like holds up the numbers, like I think she
Mm-hmm.
says like 7. So we have 7 months. And yeah, I think that 10 sequence is very well shot and well paced. Like there's one point where she's like, okay, I have to turn the baby around in the stomach. Because
Mm-hmm.
there was something going on with the umbilical cord. I forgot exactly what was happening.
Yeah, she thinks well, first the woman said she thought the baby was dead, and then after
Mm-hmm.
Mara hears her heartbeat, she says it might be the umbilical cord trapped around the baby's neck, so I better turn it around.
Okay, yeah, and you can just, and, she's telling her like, "Hey, this is gonna hurt a little bit," and as she's turning the baby, just the music score, the screams, like it's such an intense, well shot sequence that when it finally does settle down, she gets the baby turned around.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great moment. Like, like it's a great moment of tension. Is basically what I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like, we had some set piecing going on with the conversation between her and, I believe, Virginia, the
Mm-hmm.
woman that was
Yes.
sitting down with her. But I feel like this kind of amped up the tension a little bit more and keeps you engaged. So far you got a little bit of good dialogue, you got a little bit of intrigue with the cold open, and now you got some slight,
Some
psychological
suspense.
terror,
Yeah.
psychological suspense with this baby issue.
Right. And there was also, you sort of realize that Kriester, who's the Danish man, his name means follower of Christ. He
Mm,
notices Mara's wrists because she rolled her sleeves up to he doesn't say anything to her, but the two of them kind of have a moment where he's she can tell he's seen that, and she sort of puts her sleeves down, and then he just says thanks and she nods at him. So they had a moment where they're kind of like, okay, he's not going to anyway, because you can tell he's a real gentle soul, but he's also third
right.
class, she's first class. She's destined him a huge favor. He's not gonna reveal any
He's
of
not
her
gonna.
secrets. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he just says thanks, which is nice. He's a very
Well,
he
he offers something at first, right? Doesn't he offer her something and says, "This is all we have"? And I think it's like a cross, right? It's like a
Right.
metal cross.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
that's a little bit later, but he gives that to her
Oh,
as
sorry,
a
my
it's
bad.
not it's only like a couple scenes later, so it's not a huge deal. But that goes into another tense scene, so I wanted to hold off on that for just a minute. Um, so at this point we find our stowaway, who you already mentioned, the black man who it's all like he stands out just because pretty much everybody except for the Asian characters is white, so he stands
Mm.
out a lot when he comes down, but this man has somehow hidden himself on the ship and comes down, and his name is Jerome, and the name Jerome actually means sacred name. So uh he's an important character somehow. He's barefooted and basically comes in and grabs some clothes so he can find shelter, and then comes to go find some bread, which is where he talks to Oleg, and I think you already mentioned that scene.
Yeah, what I like about Jerome is that when you first see him, he looks like he's looking out for danger. He looks like he's ready at any moment to defend himself or run, fight or flight. That seems like what's going on in his head. And like when he first comes across Oleg, I didn't know what was going to happen between them. But
Mm-hmm.
then he approaches Oleg like like look, man, I'm hungry. I need some bread.
Mm-hmm.
And Oleg looks down and says, "Oh, well, here." And then when they're introducing themselves, they don't understand each other, but when they're introducing themselves again, body language is universal. They make their introductions, and you can tell they're both people with a past that is complicated and may not be known by anyone else on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Their personal past.
Right. And another thing that with their communication, you mentioned they can't understand each other, and I just realized that, but it's interesting the things they say, because Jerome comes out and Oleg is sitting on what they call the lowering deck. It's where the lifeboats are kept. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, like Oleg gets up and says, I'm sorry, I know I'm not supposed to be here. I was just taking a break. So he's instantly apologetic towards Jerome, like deferential towards him. Meanwhile, Jerome says, I'm not going to hurt you. I just need bread. So like Oleg was
That's
almost like,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, his Jerome thinks maybe he feels threatened by him, but more like he Oleg does feel threatened, but not because he thinks he's gonna hurt him. He's just more like, oh, I could get in trouble for sitting out here. And I
Yeah.
think also, I think part of it is Jerome, when he took something, one of the things he took was a coat, which I think, one of the crewmen's coats, which I think that's why the guy was so angry later, because he was wearing crewman's, clothing when he was a stowaway. But
Mm-hmm.
clever disguise. But that's why Oleg thinks he could get in trouble, because he's like, oh, this guy's one of the crewmen, I could get in trouble. So um we also have this scene with the honeymooners, which is very short, but it's worth mentioning
Mm-hmm.
that they are having unsuccessful awkward lovemaking. And um what is his name? Lucian gets very mad because he's like, Clemens is just lying there, you're not doing anything, and they sort of have this argument.
Right.
So that's, it's slightly interesting, but the more interesting part is as he walks out of the room and gets mad, he's telling her, stop pretending, you never loved me, you don't have, your parents are dead, they don't have to please them anymore. And she's looking really upset and hurt, and then when he walks to the room, her face does change and becomes sort of sly. But then there was
Mm-hmm.
this strange musical cue. I don't know if you answered that, Anthony, but it was if you realize that, but it was some kind of warbly music, and I almost thought the TV was broken for a minute. It got really distorted, and the
Yeah,
same.
I thought it was my headphones because I was watching the show on my headphones and I'd be hearing like, like distorted sound. I'm like,
Yeah.
darn things. But I was like, oh no, that's the show, you know.
because when she comes out later again, when they have another interaction, the same musical cue happens. But yeah, I thought that there was a warble or I lost internet, connection for a minute.
Right, right.
But no, so it's odd. She also has the triangles for her earrings, which triangles are obviously a big symbol in the show.
Yeah, you see them everywhere. Like I remember you and I spoke on a countdown to the show, and you put the triangle in your Twitter signature or whatever. I said I'm not putting any logo on my signature if I don't know what it means. I said I gotta watch the show first and know what that symbol means.
I think triangles can mean many things, but
Yeah. I was being funny.
yeah, no, I remember that and I thought it was funny, but then you're kind of like, oh gosh, am I putting a hex upon myself by putting this triangle here?
I didn't think it was that extreme, but I was like, I want to watch the show first to see what this means. Does everyone die who has this on them?
Yeah, it's like Bloody Mary or something. I don't know. So this is where we have the scene with Mara and the little girl, and she says, I want to be a doctor just like you. And that's when she says, well, she asks her if she has children, and Mara says, I don't understand you. She puts her hand on the belly, and then we have this weird vision, like flashes of something she's seeing or remembering. And that's when Kriester comes out and he gives her the cross and says, this is all we have. And she starts getting more of these flashes. And I don't remember exactly all that's seen. I know we see like the leather things around the wrists. Do you remember any other of the images that flashed?
I didn't. None of the images like come to mind, but I do remember the flashing of images when she asked the question of when she puts the hand on the belly.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't remember them in particular, but yeah.
Yeah, but she just tells her, I can't have children, I think is what she says.
Right, yeah.
She runs upstairs then, and she's gasping for air, and she pulls a necklace out, which the necklace is not a triangle. I thought it was going to be a triangle, but it was some kind of what do you call it, a hexagon. So she pulls it out and looks at it for a moment, almost sort of like at the beginning when she's telling herself, I'm more Franklin, maybe, but a little more out of breath this time. But she's just kind of grabbing that and centering herself. And that's when we meet Captain Ike. And that was a cool scene because he's blurry. He comes out and grows solid, and he's wearing this amazing coat, which everybody's gonna want that coat now once they see it.
Yeah.
And he starts out by talking to her in German, and I thought this part was interesting. He speaks to her in German and says, "Did you get lost?" And then she says, I didn't see you there. And he quickly switches to English.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that he sort of, I guess I'm not sure why he started with German and then changed to English.
I mean, probably just like I didn't make that much out of it. I kind of looked at it as like, oh, he's a well-traveled man, so he can switch to whatever he needs to switch to. So like, well, that he knows. So started out German, thought maybe she was German, or maybe that forgot he was speaking in his native tongue, and then went, oh, okay, she's an English woman. Let me switch it up.
Mm-hmm. And he had a bottle of liquor he was storing in his coat, so he hid that really quickly. Yeah. And then he asked her what she was doing in third class, because the gate that there's this gate that's separating them. He sees that's open, so he realizes she must have come from there. He's asked her, what were you doing down there? And she says, none of your business. And then he says there are rules and they shouldn't be questioned. And she says, who made those rules and for whose benefit were they made. And he kind of smiles at her. I thought that was really cute. He was just like, he sort of secretly pleased, I felt, that she was challenging him in a way. I thought their dynamic was really interesting from the get-go.
I mean, from that moment forward, like not particularly in that moment, but there's a moment where they're talking together on the railing. I mean, you can cut the sexual tension with a knife. I mean, the show kind of makes it clear as it goes on. Like, okay, these people are going to be shipped.
They're gonna be shipped.
Pun intended. I didn't even catch on to that. Pun intended.
I Oh my gosh, we're done. I mean, you just landed that. That's a great pun. But I don't know. I didn't necessarily clock it
Not in that moment.
as
Not at that
sexual
moment.
right away, but regardless of if it's sexual or not, there are some people that just connect from the beginning and they have an unspoken connection. So it could be romantic, it could just be soulmates of some kind where they just kind of seem to understand each other and they keep ending up in the same deck over and over together.
Right.
But his name means oak or ruler, and his name is also an anagram of the word key, which is kind of interesting because, not to jump ahead at all, but I did see all the episode titles. One of the episode titles is the key. So something to look forward to in the future, maybe.
Okay.
So they get interrupted by the crew, who says that they've received a signal of some kind and that they think it's the Prometheus, and the captain walks off then. This scene here was a little bit of another action scene, right? A little bit, they study the coordinates, and all they're getting though is the signal. Doesn't say it's the Prometheus, not asking for help. But since it's only 7 hours away, I mean that must be a much bigger thing by ship. But the captain decides they are going to reduce speed and turn.
And that leads to like a little bit of chaos where you see kind of like almost every person's vantage point. And I like how almost everybody's saying the same thing, where it's like the ship is turning around. I can't go back. I don't want to go back. Everyone like almost says like I don't want to go back to, as you said, the old continent. I'm not going back. Like, and it leads even more intrigue to these characters. Like what is everyone running from? What is everyone trying to come to? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Definitely Angel and Ramiro do that, as well as the woman who is pregnant, Tove. She doesn't want to turn around. I don't remember who else. The Polish guy, Oleg, I think he does that. So there's different people.
Quite a few,
yeah. They're very unhappy about this decision. So at this point, we have a little visit with Angel and Ramiro in their cabin, this is about the time they notice the ship turning. But he says, he's sketching in a sketchbook and says, you should have a chat with God about why he made you a sheep and me a wolf. And I liked that line a lot. I don't know what that means, but like you said, he's gonna be a fun character.
I think he's a wolf. I think he knows how to manipulate people. I mean, we see it later on in another scene that we'll get to. But yeah, I feel like I think he may be underestimating his brother as a sheep, and he might surprise us too, because there's no way that guy's really a priest. But I feel like he could surprise us as well.
So did you think he was really a priest, and do you think they're really brothers?
I don't think he's a priest. I think they are brothers, but I don't think he's a priest. He doesn't he gives so many like facial like cues that goes, oh, I have to, act as if I'm in a position of power here. I forget, like he keeps forgetting that he's wearing the uniform at times.
Mm-hmm. I didn't quite get that sense, but I was questioning whether he was actually a priest or not, just
Well, it's the
because.
scene.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the scene where, again, jump ahead a little bit. They're about to leave, and somebody goes, "Hey, shouldn't we take him? He's a
Take the priest.
priest."
Mm-hmm.
And then he looks, he has that moment where the captain approaches him. And he kind of looks around like, "Who, me? Oh, yes, yes, yes. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Like he kind
Oh,
of
I
forgot
didn't
who he
notice
was.
that. I didn't notice
Yeah,
that, but that's interesting. Yeah, if he was like, "Who, priest?" Oh, me.
I guess I interpreted it that way. He kind of had that facial expression, like, "Oh, yes, yes, I am."
Yeah, he was definitely nervous about going with them. But the other thing about this interaction in their drawing room is he says, Angel says, "I have no fear. You're consumed by it." But yet, when the ship turned around, Angel looked pretty nervous and scared about it.
Starts
So
shaking in his boots.
yeah, maybe he does. He's not so fearless as he thinks. We then had a brief scene with Tove, who's a pregnant woman, and the little girl named Ada, which I thought this was interesting about Tove is also upset, and Ada reminds her of a story she told her about a ghost ship where the people had all sinned by killing a whale, and when the ship was found, everybody was just shadows. So I did try to look and see what this. My initial thought was, oh, this is Moby Dick somehow, but that doesn't sound like the story of Moby Dick to me quite. So I wasn't sure about the origin of the story she was telling her. If it's, they're Danish. She said this is just a story, just a fairy tale. So maybe it's a Danish, some kind of a Danish folk tale. I wasn't sure about that.
Could be.
Yeah, but it was, it's this whole idea of ghosts or shadows on a ship was the idea. So regardless of what the reference point is, it definitely goes with the story. Mora is now in her drawing room, and she pulls out this letter again, which we didn't really mention, I don't think, but she has a letter that
Mm.
she pulled out before, and the letter has a note from her brother. Well, yeah, it says your brother, but the note is kind of weird. We should probably talk about
Mm.
that. The note says on the envelope, it says Henry.
Mm.
And the note though says, uh, it says like, don't trust anyone, and I found out what our father was doing. Meet me in New York, I think. That's not in the right order, but it's basically like, I found out what our father was doing, meet me in New York, don't trust anyone, signed your brother. And so, you're like, okay, well, this is a letter to her, but the letter says Henry. So who's Henry?
Right, right. Um, yeah, I think I got an idea of who Henry could be, but I'll wait till we're further along.
Yeah. But we have this, she has this letter. Also on the envelope, it says what's lost will be found. And so she has this letter, she looks at it and decides to go visit Captain Ike in his quarters. Now, once again, she is somewhere where she's not supposed to be, because she wasn't supposed to be in third class, and she's not supposed to
Mm.
be in the captain's quarters either, but she's gonna do it anyway. He's drinking again, and he has a picture of his family, and she basically is like, is it true you found the Prometheus? um and he sort of starts to ask her, he's trying to find out, what does she know about the Prometheus, if she knew anybody on board. It looked like she was about ready to maybe confess, but changes her mind at the last minute.
Forgive me if you already mentioned this, but I believe before she comes in, we see him looking at a photo of his family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, we don't
Yeah.
know if it's his family or not, but it's a picture of him with a woman and three daughters. Yeah.
Him with sure. Him with a group of people.
Oh
You think they're on, you think they were supposed to be on the Prometheus?
no. No, he's at work.
He's
Oh,
at
you're
work.
saying, I thought, okay, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about his ship. Were they on the Prometheus? That's an interesting theory. I don't know.
Yeah. I think because he seems very, very now I understand leave no ship behind. I understand the mission.
Mm-hmm.
But when all of your I don't want to say co-captains, but when all of your sergeant, I'll call them sergeants, are telling you, hey, how about we just send out basically we don't really have to go to where it is. We're kind of breaking protocol here. Like, wait, if we go to what it is, we can kind of let people know that they're there. We don't have to go on the ship. And it seems like further and further, Captain Ike is like, no, 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 no. We're gonna go to where they are, and no, I'm going on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So something's driving him to that ship. And I
Yeah.
think it might be his family or somebody that's involved with his family or somebody, as you said, that was in the picture.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean
No,
it's
no, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, nothing is as it seems. So it is best to say, like, hey, we don't know.
But yeah, that's the feeling you get is, oh, it looks like it's his family portrait, for sure. We also find out he has an identical letter, which
Mm-hmm.
supports your theory about too is what's lost will be found. We kind of think I think we're supposed to think that Mara knew someone on the Prometheus, which he asks her directly, did you know someone on the Prometheus? And who knows, maybe if she had told him, who knows, maybe he would have told her about who he knew. But he is especially driven to find out. Yeah, it could be no ship left behind. It could be they've been missing for 4 months and I'm the type that saves people, so I want to make sure they're saved. But yeah, he seems especially driven for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but it sort of closes the conversation right there because he's like, "You'll just get an update at dinner with everybody else," and
Right, right.
gives her the
You're not
signal time to
special.
leave. Yeah, even though he did say you shouldn't be there, and then she walked in anyway, and then he shuts the door. So she's special in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then we get a little interaction again with Ling and Yuke with Mrs. Wilson, who is upset at the two women because she heard them talking. That was that was interesting. It's like, yeah, you were certainly talking. Mrs. Wilson was doing a lot of talking. But for someone who seems Miss Wilson seems like very progressive, but yet she's telling these women they, they were not doing what they were supposed to do. And you're just supposed to don't talk and Ling should cheer up is what is
Right.
what
She's cheer up. That was funny to me. Like, tell the girl to chill out, cheer up.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, we still don't get any more clues about exactly how they're connected, but it's apparent that maybe Mrs. Wilson isn't traveling alone after all, which
Mm-hmm.
they're hiding this again. More secrets, more secrets. Okay, so the captain then talks to everybody in the dining hall and tells them that they're going to intercept the Prometheus, and everybody's complaining, especially Annabelle. he
Mm-hmm.
he also complained in English, which I thought was okay. So yeah, he's gonna complain in English because um I don't know. I just thought that was interesting though, because he says before nobody can understand me anyway. But I guess
Right.
that's why he did that, so nobody could understand him.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting scene. Interesting scene. It shows how Captain Ike presents himself as a captain. He's professional. He's courteous, to the guests and let him know what he's doing, but he really moves at his own beat. And like I said, everything up to this point, going towards the Prometheus, later on coming on to the Prometheus, it's all because of his own beat and what he wants to do. That may prove to be a detriment later. We might see a little bit of mutiny among the ranks, or maybe not. He really is breaking protocol with a lot of things he's been spearheading so far.
And so Lucien also, everybody's pretty upset, but Lucien also walks out of the ship and is kind of leaning over the deck, and his hands are shaking, and Clemens comes to try to comfort him again. But he also is distraught, obviously, that they are going to do this. He does not, either he doesn't want any delays on his way across the ocean, or he does not want to go to the Prometheus somehow. So not sure exactly what's going on with that. But this is where excuse me, this is where Oleg and Jerome meet for the first time, and they trade names, and Oleg shares his bread, which is nice. So we have another scene with Mara and Captain Von Eyck. They can't seem to stay away from each other, which is this is the scene where he's musing about the ocean, how deep it is. It's 4,000 meters deep, and we've mapped the whole world, but we haven't mapped the ocean. And it's very lyrical, poetic language. It kind of reminds you of that poem at the beginning, again, about the brain being deeper than the sea and wider than the sky and all that.
James Cameron probably heard that and went, okay, challenge accepted. Because, once upon a time, he went really down in the deep for a documentary he made, really down in the ocean.
There was also a moment here where he asks more about her being a doctor, and she says, Mrs. Wilson was right, rumors do spread fast, but there's just as many rumors about you. And he's sort of smiling, but then when he looks off the deck, he looks worried again. So more secrets. We then finally see the Prometheus in the distance. There is a flare that is thrown up in the air, and the ship is not looking good. Did you notice how dirty it was? And
yeah, it literally looked like a ghost ship.
And this is where the crewmen are, once they see it, probably if there had been other signs of life and people like saying help, they would have been like, yes, we're going to come. But because they come and the ship's dirty and it looks completely, like you said, a ghost ship, everybody's like, wait a second, this is a bad idea. We should call for help and just keep going and let someone else do it. And the captain says, no, we're going to lower a lifeboat and you're going to be in charge and we're going to leave you in charge. And he just does he's the man in charge. He is going to do it.
Yeah.
We then had the scene with the priest. They have I should already mention, Mara has also said she's going to go because she's a doctor, don't know what they're going to find. And then they say we should bring the priest too because the people could need comfort. And the priest says, but I can't speak their language. And they're like, no, we just want you to be there for them to look at you so they can be comforted.
See, now all this sounds like the beginning of an elaborate joke. A doctor, a captain, a priest all enter an abandoned ship.
Yeah. Actually, it should be like a captain. It is like a captain, a doctor, a priest, a Polak, because there's they have the this is kind of skipped around a little bit, but basically the captain and the crewmen came to the lowering deck and they find Oleg and Jerome, and the crewmen are like, we don't want to go. So the captain's like, all right, great, you two are gonna come with me instead.
Right.
So this is how we get our crew that's coming on the lifeboat across to the Prometheus. We'll have to more. We can maybe like next episode we can talk about the words, the Prometheus, and then the Kerberos, which is the ship that all these passengers are on, which is another form of Cerberus. So we can get into some Greek mythology, but we will hold off on
Mm-hmm.
that for the next episode. All right, so then this is the scene you were referring to before, where Angel is kind of a little bit of a power play move, I would say, where
Yeah.
he's on the deck and Creaster is still in his third class inside his third class gate and asks if he could have a cigarette. So what's your reaction to this scene? What do you remember about it?
Um. Well, what I vaguely remember is that Creaster kind of asks uh what's his name,
Angel.
Angel, for a light, for a cigarette, and Angel hands him his cigarette that he was
Mm-hmm.
smoking. Creaster takes it with some hesitancy,
Mm-hmm.
takes it, and and Anzo kind of like touches Creaster's face, telling him, "Oh, you got such a lovely face."
Mm-hmm.
It's manipulation. It's coming on to him. You could tell there's an angle that he has. My only thing is, what do you want with Creaster?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what could you want from the people that live downstairs? What information are you trying to get out of them? So it's me trying to understand where Ansel is going for and what his motivation is. It um just left me intrigued. And of course, Creaster doesn't seem like a fool. He knows this guy, something's off with him,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Well, I wasn't sure. Like, okay, I agree. It could be. My thought was, well, I did notice in the dining hall scene when he comes in and asks for help, Angel does sort of notice him, and he tells him, "I remember you. You have an interesting face, and your scar suits you." But the way he does it, because of the fact that Angel's in the first class, there's the class differences. It comes
Right.
off slightly predatory,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
but on the other hand, I was like, okay, how does he mean it? Is he being tender? Is he doing a power play? Does he know he can get away with it? I wasn't necessarily thinking he wanted something. Be like he might be a sex addict. He might, he might genuinely think he's an interesting person. So um
Mm-hmm.
he seems pretty um I don't know what you call it, but he
The
seems
score
like
didn't give that off. The score gave off something sinister. That's the see. I feel like when I hear a music score, I feel like it's like what Hans Zimmer says. It's like I don't want to tell you how to feel. I want to tell you when to feel. So
mhm.
like when I'm hearing the score, if that score wasn't there, I don't know. I probably would have different reactions to that scene. But I was like, the score made it seem like, okay, this is a twirling mustache kind of moment, you know.
Yeah.
Let me see what I can get out of this guy.
I don't remember what the musical cue was, but I did think it was slightly, I don't know, it made me feel a little creeped out, basically, is the overall feeling is like, ew, I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
he shouldn't do that. He shouldn't touch him, like I didn't. So maybe just go with the gut reaction. It made me feel gross.
Whatever it made you feel, it wasn't good.
Yeah. Um, so now our crew has gotten over to the Prometheus and they're climbing aboard, and the rest of it is really about just looking around the ship, looking for clues. There's not much going on. They do find the machine that was sending the signal
Right.
is broken apparently.
That whole sequence kind of meandered a bit. Like I feel like some of that could have been shortened down because a lot of it is just looking around with the flashlights and trying to see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
When they first get on, you get a lot of good scenes. Like, what happened to this place? Everything is kind of covered up in cobwebs, looks dusty, old. Like you said, they find the machine.
Was
Everything
the
from that point,
paper he picked up from the floor, the strip of paper, was that was that like the telegraph machine or the signal, like a strip of paper from that? I couldn't tell what that was that he picked up.
I don't know what that was from, but I did notice it had a lot of color on it.
Yeah.
It was like a lot of color. Like everything else here is like in color, but it's like kind of like grayish, like a grayish tint to a cinematography. That
Mhm.
had a lot of color on it, like the bugs. Like I'm sure we're gonna get to it, but the bugs
Yeah.
we see. So I thought that was interesting, and that probably meant something.
Talk
Uh,
about the bug. You can go ahead. We're coming towards the end here.
so we see a bug. I mean, they see a few bugs on the floor, and that kind of leads to like a little like part of a cabinet that
Hmm.
has like something put through it that locks it,
Right.
and through some banging, and when it gets open, we learn there's a little boy in there.
Right.
So before the conclusion of that moment, we got a guy that comes on the cruise ship. I mean, that comes on the ship that they just came from.
Hmm.
Um, and this guy has a bug around him or following him. Uh, he comes to a door. I don't know if you remember the number on the door, but
So the first
the
door
book.
was Mara's door, 1011. He stops
Mhm.
there and he moves over to 1013.
Yeah, and the bug goes underneath that door, and then the door opens and he goes in.
Hmm. So the bug, the beetle, is a locksmith somehow.
Yeah, either that or he might have a cohort on the ship.
Hmm.
Now I think that guy, just speculating, he could be Mora's brother, maybe a more uh mentally far gone version of her brother, but he's going to be somebody important. But I was thinking off the top, okay, he might be the brother.
Hmm. Yeah, that's of course the thought. I mean, my I guess another question is, how did he get there? Like, did he come from the Prometheus? Did he swim over from the Prometheus, or where did this man come from? Is he like Jerome and was kind of hiding, and but he must have been hiding in a very wet place, but he just literally, at the same time they are exploring the ship is when he comes on to the Prometheus and he's soaking wet. So he's been in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more for me, I was just like, where did this guy come from? And of course, who is he? Um, but he was drawn to Mara's room, and then he ends up going into the room next to her. We have through this beetle, and then we had this little boy that's in the cabinet. Which, how long has that little boy been in the cabinet? Is the other thing I want to
Right,
know.
right.
Because he didn't look too starved yet. His eyes were black underneath. So, but how did the little boy get in the cabinet? Who sent the signal? Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has this object, which is a weird black pyramid. And during this time, the original version of White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane is playing. So we get to hear
Right.
both versions. I don't know. So what outstanding questions do you have about the show at this point? Like what do you think? Where
I
are we
want to
right now?
I want to know what the pyramid is, of course. Also in a triangle shape, so maybe that'll uh I got the feeling all of this is going to be just triangle related. You know, a mirror might be in the shape of a triangle. You might hear a song that the song remixes with the word triangle in it. I got a feeling this show is going to love that particular shape. Um, Lingering questions. I'm more interested in the guy that came on the boat. I want to know more about Mora. I want to know what Captain Ike's obsession is with all of this. I want to
Mhm.
know who that little boy is. That's kind of very important.
Yeah.
The little boy was creepy, so I kind of want to know more about him. I feel like that's my lingering thoughts on like the future of like the series. This one, it gave you set piecing of who everyone is. But as far as like getting deeper into what's going on in everybody's backstory, of course you would need to wait for that timer to go to next episode in 4, 3, 2, 1
Mhm.
to get more of it. But I feel like this was a nice start off point for the series.
Yeah, it really mainly just introduced all the important players and gave us a couple of cliffhangers that will probably immediately be resolved to an extent. Like we'll hear from the little boy, we'll find out a little more about the man who climbed on board,
It,
and yeah.
if that little boy turns out to be one of those characters that doesn't talk until a significant moment happens, and then all of a sudden they say little words, but little word by word, I'm gonna be pissed. I hate that trope. Like
Electively mute characters annoy you.
yeah, like until something traumatic happens that brings back memories, and then oh, all of a sudden I can speak clearly and fluently. I've just been
Mm-hmm.
deciding to be quiet. Like I hate that so much. Either
Well,
talk or don't talk at all.
for your sake, I hope that that doesn't happen. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much where I am. Did you have any other plot points or anything you wanted to pull out before I close this out?
I like to know what the significance of the bug is. Like why specifically a bug as someone that carries whatever mystical force, if there is any, that comes from the Prometheus. Like I'm just interested in what, like, why an insect? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is there like some kind of metaphor there where the brain is just like, as Emily Dickinson said, is as wide as the sea? You know, an insect while small can carry the information of, I don't know, an elephant. You know what I mean? Like is there
Yeah,
some kind of like
exactly.
message there? You know what I mean? That I'm just not catching on to yet. But I want to see them go deep into that if that comes up through dialogue or whatever.
Mm. Yeah, I think that I did see the bug is a scarab beetle, which has stuff to do with Egypt mythology, but yeah, I don't know too much about scarab beetles. I remember there were a lot
Okay,
of them. There were a lot of them in The Mummy, if you remember those movies, the Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser. Um,
of course.
so yeah, it's like I don't know the significance of beetles, but yes, it was interesting
Okay,
seeing them. The beetle led Mara to the little boy, and then there was the other man's like, "Here, you're in my pocket. Here, go do your job and unlock the door."
right.
Um, so it was definitely an interesting little thing. Oh, there is one thing I thought was kind of weird when the women, when the Chinese women are
Mm-hmm.
in their drawing room, and we find out that she needs to practice her Japanese, which we already kind of talked about that. But she
Mm-hmm.
says, everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. And I was like, what? You know, that is, why are they saying that? It seemed really out of place. And I was like, okay, where does that phrase? I've heard it before, of course, but I was like, where
Mm-hmm.
does that phrase come from? And when I did the Google search, I find that people attribute that to John Lennon, which, of course, he wasn't around in 1899. But supposedly he might have heard it from his Maharishi in India. Like he most likely heard it from somebody else and began saying that as a mantra. But it stood out really out of place, is like not something people would say in this time period.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I don't know, it was just so weird. I was like, would they say something like that? It's like one of those phrases you get from like one of those daily, coffee books that you pull out and read, inspirational phrases.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits. I think when you start off with a Emily Dickinson poem and you go from, like, again, the brain in the sea, and the poetic
Mhm.
comparisons that she was making, and you end off with John Lennon, I feel like it all fits together. It's all coming back together with the kind of influences that this show may carry on its sleeve. because John Lennon didn't exist in 1899. But
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
neither did Jefferson Airplane, but still, having a
well,
song be background is fine, but to have somebody say a line that's like,
right.
some kind of little catchphrase people make memes of off on Facebook, it was really out of place. It took me out of the story for a minute. I only mention it because I feel like it's possible that there are things in this story that, like, okay, this doesn't fit in 1899. So what does that mean, if anything?
I feel like that was the one thing that didn't fit. The Jefferson Airplane thing is fine because that's kind of like what you would call non-diegetic music.
Yeah.
I guess that's not part of the world. So it's like you can play Doja Cat for all I care, as long as it's not in that time frame. I'm like, hold on, now what's going on here? But yeah, if that really is from a John Lennon song, then that is kind of odd.
Well, not a song, but just something he said in an interview once or something. But
Oh, okay, got you. Well, do they know if it came from some if he was quoting something?
yeah, that's what I was saying. That the thought it nobody has the actual source. It's like John Lennon said it, but he most
He made it
likely heard it
famous.
from, yeah, he made it famous, exactly.
Got you.
So who knows
Oh,
where it's
yeah.
really from? But it stood out as like something that women in that time period would probably not say. But
Right.
there's that.
Gotcha.
That's it. Why don't you go ahead and tell us where people can find you if they are interested in looking more at your work?
Sure, no problem, no problem. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Blakcinephile. That's Blak Cinephile. Just take out the C in black altogether. My podcast, you can find it wherever you find podcasts, is a double feature verses. Verses is spelled out. You can search for it in YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. And yeah, like link in my bio on my Twitter basically shows the websites I post my reviews at 8bitwaffles.com, the number 8bitwaffles, and then blackcinephilewrites.wordpress.com. Kind of an interim blog site I have right now while 8-bit waffles is being worked on or whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much where where I be talking my stuff and giving my hot takes.
Wonderful. And I'm one of my stories. If you have things you noticed on 1899, please feel free to put them in the comments or tweet at us. I will put my information in there also. We'd love to hear from you. And if you write us a letter, we'll read it as part of the show. Haha. So,
Sure.
see you next time on one of my stories. Bye.
See ya.